In the glittering heart of New York's fashion district, everyone knew the name Marcus Hale. He was the golden boy of American luxury fashion, the man who turned a small atelier into a billion-dollar empire. But very few people knew the real genius behind the brand. That genius was Leela Moreau. At 29, Leela was quiet, brilliant, and dangerously talented. With her sharp hazel eyes, messy bun, and ink-stained fingers, she had spent 6 years turning Marcus's vague ideas into runway magic. Every collection that made headlines, the floating silk gowns, the architectural leather jackets, the signature Midnight Bloom print, was born in her sketchbooks at 3 a.m. Marcus called her his secret weapon. He also called her his fiancée. They had been together for 4 years. He promised her co-founder status, equal credit, and a wedding in Tuscany. Leela believed him. She worked harder than anyone, pouring her soul into every stitch and sketch, while Marcus took meetings, posed for magazine covers, and collected awards. The night everything changed was supposed to be their biggest moment. The Met Gala after party. Marcus was accepting the Designer of the Decade award for the Midnight Bloom collection, the one Leela had created from start to finish after her mother's death. She had designed it while crying in hospital corridors. On stage, under blinding lights, Marcus held the crystal trophy high and said, "This collection came from one man's vision. I poured my blood, sweat, and soul into every piece. Thank you for believing in my dream." The room erupted in applause. Leela sat at the front table in a black gown she had designed herself, her hands trembling in her lap. He never said her name, not once. Later that night, in their Tribeca loft, she finally asked the question she had buried for years. "Why didn't you mention me?" Marcus poured himself a whiskey, loosened his tie, and laughed like she had told a joke. "Leela, sweetheart, nobody wants to hear about the girl who draws pretty pictures. They want the face, the story, the brand. You're the engine. I'm the driver. That's how the world works." He kissed her forehead like she was a child. "Besides," he added, "you're nothing without me. Who would buy your little sketches if I wasn't the one selling them?" The next morning, Leela woke up to divorce papers on the kitchen island. Marcus had already moved the entire Midnight Bloom intellectual property into a new company under his sole name. He had frozen their joint accounts. He had told the board she was emotionally unstable and stepping away for personal reasons. By afternoon, the press release went out. Marcus Hale parts ways with longtime collaborator due to creative differences. Leela was erased in less than 48 hours. She packed 2 suitcases, left the loft with nothing but her old sketchbooks, and moved into a tiny studio in Bushwick. For 3 days, she didn't speak. She just sat on the floor, surrounded by her original drawings. On the 4th day, she opened a blank notebook and wrote one line at the top. Karma took notes. Then she started planning. Leela disappeared completely. She changed her name to Leela Vale, cut her long hair into a sleek bob, and moved to a quiet neighborhood in Queens. No social media, no industry events, no trace of the woman who once lived in Tribeca penthouses. She took a part-time job teaching pattern making at a small community college under her new name. At night, she worked on something else, something secret. She started a hidden Instagram account called @ThreadOfTruth. No face, no name, just anonymous posts of breathtaking original designs with one caption: "Some stories are stolen, some are remembered." The account grew slowly but powerfully. Fashion students, young designers, and insiders began following. They sensed something real. Meanwhile, Marcus's empire soared. The Midnight Bloom collection won every major award. He launched a new line called Hail Eternal and dated a famous model. He gave interviews saying he had finally found creative freedom after removing toxic influences. Every interview was another page in Leela's notebook. She began collecting evidence the way other people collected shoes. She saved every email, every sketch comparison, every voice note where Marcus had once praised her work. She hired a discreet forensic accountant who discovered Marcus had been underpaying royalties to freelance artists for years. She also started something much more dangerous. She created a private network called the Unseen Thread, a group of 12 women designers who had been erased by powerful men in fashion. They shared stories, evidence, and strategies in encrypted chats. No one knew Leela was the one who started it. One night, a young designer named Maya sent her a message. "He stole my entire graduation collection and launched it as his new discovery. I have nothing left." Leela replied with 3 words: "I know exactly how that feels." That was the moment she decided the plan would be silent, elegant, and total. She would not scream, she would not sue, she would simply become the ghost that haunted his success until it devoured him. And she would do it without ever saying her real name again. 2 years after her erasure, Leela was ready. She created the perfect alias, Valentina Sage, a reclusive British designer who had been working in London. The portfolio was flawless, pieces she had created in secret during her disappearance. Marcus's company was looking for a creative director for their new luxury diffusion line. The salary was massive, the power was enormous. Leela applied as Valentina. She walked into the final interview wearing a simple black dress and glasses. Marcus sat at the head of the table and never recognized her. "You have an incredible eye," he leaned forward, "almost like you understand my aesthetic better than I do." Leela smiled politely. "I've studied your work very carefully." She got the job. On her first day, she walked through the same glass doors she had helped design years earlier. The same receptionist who once brought her coffee now greeted Valentina Sage with awe. Marcus gave her full access to everything, and Leela began to work. She didn't sabotage, she didn't leak, she simply observed. She noticed how Marcus was now rushing collections, cutting corners, and stealing ideas from younger designers. She noticed how his ego had grown so large that he no longer checked details. She started making tiny, invisible improvements to his new line. The clothes looked better, sales increased. Marcus took all the credit and praised Valentina publicly. The irony was delicious. Meanwhile, her secret account, @ThreadOfTruth, reached 180,000 followers. She began dropping subtle hints, never naming Marcus, but posting side-by-side comparisons of stolen designs from various brands. The fashion world started whispering. One evening, Marcus called her into his office. "Valentina, I want you to lead the next major collection. This could be the biggest thing we've ever done." Leela looked him calmly. "I would be honored." She already knew this would be the collection that ended him. because this time she had built in a trap so elegant that when it finally sprang, no one would ever see her hand in it. Leela worked in complete silence. While Marcus bragged about the upcoming collection in every interview, she spent months perfecting it. Every design was flawless, every fabric choice was intentional, every detail was perfect. But hidden inside the collection was something only she knew about. She had embedded tiny, almost invisible signatures in the linings of every garment, a private code that spelled out the truth when scanned under special light. She also created a digital watermark in the campaign photos that would only reveal itself if someone looked closely enough. She didn't rush. She let Marcus fall in love with the collection. The scandal moved like wildfire. By the next morning, every major fashion publication had the story. The hashtag "stolen by Hale" trended worldwide. Retailers began pulling the entire collection from their stores. Investors started dumping shares. Marcus held an emergency press conference in Paris. He looked broken. "This is a coordinated attack," he said, voice shaking. "Someone is trying to destroy me out of jealousy." But the evidence was overwhelming. Within 48 hours, 3 major retailers canceled their orders. His biggest investor pulled out completely. The French authorities opened an investigation into intellectual property theft. His fiancée left him and gave an interview saying she couldn't be with a man who steals from women. Leela watched it all from her hotel room in Paris. She never posted a single word. She never gave an interview. She simply let the truth do the work. Marcus tried everything. He offered settlements, he threatened lawsuits, he even tried to contact her through old mutual friends. She never responded. Instead, she returned to New York and quietly rebranded her company as Veil Studio. The fashion world began to notice. Young designers started reaching out. Major ethical brands wanted to collaborate. The Unseen Thread network grew to over 200 women. Marcus's company filed for bankruptcy 8 months later. He lost the penthouse, he lost the cars, he lost the reputation. He moved into a small 1-bedroom apartment in New Jersey and took a job as a junior pattern maker, the same entry-level position Leela had started in years earlier. The man who once said she was nothing without him had become nothing without her silence. 3 years after the Paris Fashion Week collapse, Leela Veil no longer needed to hide. The name Veil Studio had become a quiet revolution in the fashion world. What began as a small Brooklyn loft operation with 3 sewing machines and a single intern had grown into a global force with showrooms in New York, Paris, Milan, and Tokyo. The company now employed 142 people, 78% women, 45% from underrepresented communities, and every single one of them received equity on day 1. There were no creative directors who took sole credit. There were only creators, and every name went on every garment tag. Leela's guiding principle was simple and ironclad. No design leaves this studio without the maker's name permanently attached. She enforced it ruthlessly. When a major department store tried to negotiate a private label deal that would strip designer credits, she walked away from a 7-figure contract without blinking. When a celebrity stylist demanded anonymity for a custom gown so they could claim the idea, Leela politely declined and donated the piece to a charity auction instead. The gown sold for $87,000, and the proceeds funded scholarships for young designers. The fashion press called it the Veil Standard. Young designers called it the only place that feels safe. Leela mentored relentlessly. Every quarter, she ran a free 6-week intensive called Thread of Truth, a program for designers who had been exploited, erased, or underpaid. She taught pattern making, sourcing, pricing, negotiation, and most importantly, how to protect ownership of their work. She brought in lawyers, accountants, and copyright experts. She shared the contracts she used at Vale Studio. She told stories, without ever naming Marcus, about what happened when creators stayed silent too long. Over 3 years, more than 420 women and non-binary designers passed through the program. Many went on to launch their own brands. Others became lead designers at ethical houses. A few even started rival studios that operated on the same principles. Leela never asked for credit. She never took a percentage. She simply said, "Pay it forward when you can." The ripple effect was undeniable. In design schools across the country, professors began showing the Midnight Bloom scandal as a case study, not in creativity, but in ethics. The slide deck usually ended with the same sentence: "Do not be like Marcus Hale." Students were taught to watermark sketches, timestamp files, register copyrights early, and never sign away ownership without legal review. The name Marcus Hale became shorthand for creative theft, the way Ponzi became shorthand for fraud. Meanwhile, Marcus had become a ghost. After the bankruptcy, he tried to rebrand himself as a consultant. No one hired him. He applied for teaching positions at fashion institutes. Every application was quietly declined. Eventually, he landed a part-time role teaching basic sewing at a community college in New Jersey. The pay was barely enough for rent and groceries. His students didn't know his past. He never told them. He simply sat in the back of the classroom while younger instructors ran the lessons. He lived alone in a one-bedroom apartment above a laundromat. The walls were bare. The fridge was almost always empty. He spent most evenings scrolling through old photos of his former life, red carpets, magazine covers, the applause at Paris Fashion Week, and then scrolling through Leela's Instagram. Vale Studio posted almost daily, behind-the-scenes shots of designers at work, sketches with full credits, finished garments tagged with every name involved. The comments were full of praise. "Thank you for showing us how it should be done. This is what real leadership looks like. I cried when I saw my name on a tag for the first time." Marcus never commented. He just stared at the screen until his eyes burned. One afternoon, he walked past a boutique in Hoboken that carried Vale Studio pieces. In the window was a simple black dress, clean lines, perfect construction, the kind of thing he used to dismiss as basic. The tag in the window read, "Designed by Amara Khan and Leela Vale." He stood there for a long time, watching women walk in, try it on, smile, and leave with the dress in the bag. He didn't go inside. He turned around and walked home. Leela never knew he had seen it. She didn't need to. Her victory had never been about him watching her win. It had always been about her no longer needing him to lose. 4 years and 7 months after the Paris runway that ended Marcus, a plain white envelope arrived at Vale Studios' Brooklyn headquarters. No return address, no stamp, hand-delivered by a courier who refused to give his name. Leela was alone in her office when it came. The rest of the team had already gone home. Late afternoon light slanted through the tall windows, painting gold stripes across her desk. She recognized the handwriting immediately, sharp, slightly slanted, the same looping M he had used to sign contracts years ago. She didn't open it right away. She set the envelope on the desk, poured herself a cup of chamomile tea from the kettle she kept in the corner, and sat down. For several minutes, she simply looked at it, as though the paper itself might speak first. Then, with slow, deliberate movements, she slid a letter opener under the flap and broke the seal. Inside was a single sheet of unlined paper. The ink was black, the letters small and careful, as if written by a hand that no longer trusted itself. "Leela, I don't expect you to read this. I don't expect forgiveness. I don't even expect you to finish the sentence before you burn the page. I'm writing anyway. I live in a one-bedroom walk-up in Jersey City now. The rent is paid on the 1st of every month because I can't afford to miss it. I work part-time at a small pattern-making shop, mostly grading seams and cutting muslin for students. The owner doesn't know who I used to be. I never told him. I don't tell anyone. I sit at the back of the classroom while younger instructors run the lessons.
I live alone in a one-bedroom apartment above a laundromat. The walls are bare, the fridge is almost always empty. He spent most evenings scrolling through old photos of his former life, red carpets, magazine covers, the applause at Paris Fashion Week, and then scrolling through Leela's Instagram. Veil Studio posted almost daily, behind-the-scenes shots of designers at work, sketches with full credits, finished garments tagged with every name involved. The comments were full of praise. "Thank you for showing us how it should be done. This is what real leadership looks like. I cried when I saw my name on a tag for the first time." Marcus never commented. He just stared at the screen until his eyes burned. One afternoon, he walked past a boutique in Hoboken that carried Veil Studio pieces. In the window was a simple black dress, clean lines, perfect construction, the kind of thing he used to dismiss as basic. The tag in the window read, "Designed by Amara Khan and Leela Veil." He stood there for a long time, watching women walk in, try it on, smile, and leave with the dress in the bag. He didn't go inside. He turned around and walked home. Leela never knew he had seen it. She didn't need to. Her victory had never been about him watching her win. It had always been about her no longer needing him to lose. 4 years and 7 months after the Paris runway that ended Marcus, a plain white envelope arrived at Veil Studios' Brooklyn headquarters. No return address, no stamp, hand-delivered by a courier who refused to give his name. Leela was alone in her office when it came. The rest of the team had already gone home. Late afternoon light slanted through the tall windows, painting gold stripes across her desk. She recognized the handwriting immediately, sharp, slightly slanted, the same looping M he had used to sign contracts years ago.